Welcome to DS Trucks. In today's video, we're going to be putting the Pro Power onboard system to the test, and what we're going to be using is this air compressor. I believe this thing draws like 1500 watts. We're going to plug it right in to the outlet in the bed, and we're going to find out how this system performs powering that air compressor. Now, we have our 2000 watt inverter right here behind the seat, or underneath the seat, and we have two AGM batteries in close proximity to the inverter. And I went ahead and removed the cover so that we could see everything involved, but basically two tabs, one on each side, and two plastic clips. Just pop it off and that one lifts straight up. Now I'm curious about this because if you follow the channel, you know in my previous F450 I installed a power inverter in the truck. The difference in my install is I had more power. I had 3000 watts instead of 2000 watts, and I could use my inverter at any time because it was not integrated into the system. Whereas this one, you have to start the engine, you have to turn on generator mode and all that stuff. So generator mode is really easy to turn on. There's a button for it right here. You can also go into the infotainment and do it. The truck's still kind of waking up here. So now that I press the button, it's telling me right now the vehicle's in generator mode. And let's go into our features, hit our Pro Power on board, and we should have available 2000 watts of power to us. So basically what Ford has done to achieve 2000 watts of power, they've taken the second alternator and turned it into a dedicated generator and put its own belt on it, and I believe it's this one right here. So once this one is activated, it sends 24 volts to the rear instead of 12 volts. That's why it needs its own alternator, because they want to run it at 24 volts. And the reason they want to run it at 24 volts is it cuts the wiring diameter down probably in half. Instead of maybe even more than in half. So instead of running real heavy gauge wire, being at 24 volts, you can run thinner copper. And if you were to run 2000 watts at 12 volts, you need so much more copper. It's probably cheaper for them to make the system a 24 volt system in order to get the higher amount of wattage that can power bigger components, bigger items. So this is a 24 volt battery together, two 12 volt batteries together, and that goes straight to our inverter. So 24 volts is a cheaper system to build. And if you've ever looked at like solar powered RVs or solar systems that have batteries and stuff, the systems are cheaper as the voltage is higher. 24 volts is cheaper to build than a 12 volt system, and a 48 volt system is also cheaper to build than a 24 volt system, because as the voltage goes up, the wiring size goes down. So let's go ahead and try this out. I'm a little bit curious. This is kind of like the moment of truth. Let's we turn on generator mode. Let's see if this reaches. And I could also maybe get a couple more items to plug in here, because this should run. It's within the 2000 watt territory. All right, so she's plugged in. Let's go ahead and hit that switch and see what happens. Is it going to be too much? She's a running. Let's go ahead and take a look here at the screen if it's telling us how much she's drawing. So previously when I ran this in my wife's power boost, it said that we were drawing 1500 watts. Now, interestingly, it's drawing 1100. I wonder if as the air compressor the air pressure rises, if that goes up, if it draws more power as the compressor rises. But this system is not having any problems running this. Another thing that I noticed kind of, is it running more efficiently? I know that it was running at 1500 watts before, but maybe it gets up there as the pressure rises, because the air pressure, I depleted the air pressure, so it's not really yeah, it does seem to be requiring more power as it builds up pressure. So pretty interesting. That's good power. I mean, a big air compressor like that, it's pretty decent power. So pros and cons of this system as we build air and kind of watch these numbers rise. One of the cons, there's some cons here. So one of the cons is this system is going to eliminate my second alternator from the system. And for me to be running a lot of 12 volt items, I don't like the idea. I don't love the idea of losing an alternator and having just a single alternator in a diesel application. When I'm running a snowplow on this truck, I need as much 12 volt juice as possible. And while a single alternator or dual battery setup should be able to handle it, a dual alternator will ultimately be better, because on the 12 volt side, you can never have too much, because 12 volts is a tough system to run. It has to lift and angle and rise 1,000-pound plow off the front end. Then it has to power a salter on the rear simultaneously a lot of times. So that means that it's kind of a downgrade on the electrical side of the system on the 12 volt system. Now, with that being said, it's really nice. One of the pros is that everything is integrated and built into the screen. I don't have to do anything. It's all into the truck. It's built in. It's telling me data, information. It's telling me how much I'm drawing right here on the screen. Pretty cool, pretty nifty, and very useful. If I were to lose power at my house or something, this could power something all night. I mean, you wouldn't want to idle the truck all night, but you could. And these diesels, they don't burn that much fuel if you idle. It's not great for them, but it doesn't burn that much fuel. So in emergency, it could be quite useful. It could probably heat your home. That's probably enough to run a furnace. Keep in mind though, a furnace is just a fan, and then it's powered by natural gas. So it's probably enough to run a furnace on it and be okay. It's not gonna run like an AC or nothing like that, but a furnace fan and the element's not powered by the if the element is not powered by, it's not an electric furnace, you know. It's not gonna run an electric furnace. It could probably run a 1500 watt heater, but it could probably run a gas furnace as well in a refrigerator. So quite useful, you know. I wonder at 2000 watts, could you run a refrigerator and a furnace? Very interesting. Certainly could do that with a power boost. At 7,000 watts of power boost could probably run most of your house. But it's just another good thing to have to run tools, to run a furnace in an event of emergency, power outage, just to have some creature comforts. So definitely useful. Definitely useful. But there, like I say, there's cons involved. Another kind of a small gripe is when you turn this thing on, the truck has to be running. And I get it, the AGM batteries are not that large, so without the generator running, you wouldn't be able to run. This thing's filling up, no problem. Without the engine running, that generator, you wouldn't be able to run very long with just these two small batteries. So I get it, but it'd be nice if they had it, even if it wasn't an option, even if it was just an option to have the bigger battery pack that you would find in like a hybrid F-150 or something, that could allow the engine to cycle as well. You know, take that same technology, because people would pay for that. People would pay for the ability for the engine to turn off. With this same load on a power boost battery, it wouldn't have to run constantly like it is now. A power boost could power that 1500 watts right from the power boost battery. So maybe there's some issues there with that power boost battery. It's probably even higher voltage than 24 volts, but being that we dedicated a generator to this inverter, why not even have the generator run more than 24 volts? I don't know. But yeah, if this thing could cycle, I don't know how it could be achieved. that would be nice, you know, to have something that didn't need to run the engine. Nonetheless, still a good feature to have even if you're running the engine. So maybe I'll grab a couple more items, plug them in, and see if it can run more than just this. Hold on one second. So I noticed something interesting. So I grabbed this vacuum. I garbage picked it, whatever, and it's able to run on this outlet. But if I try to run both of these at the same time, you can hear the power drop right away. This thing can't run them together. Now, turn this off, and yeah, so this thing kicks on, and it just, you can hear the power being drained from that. Now, let's turn this on and let's listen to this thing. It's running now, but this system is really struggling right now with just this. As I reach the max PSI, I actually just overloaded that system just by running this, and it's getting to the point where it won't run that motor. Even though we're in the range, according to the screen here, we're well within the range. I'm getting some problems where this motor just won't run right as the max pressure. Now, I wasn't filming it, but I actually thought this thing was broken. It wasn't getting that final push. I don't know if this thing can really get to that final, you know, push on the air pressure here. It was definitely just struggling with that, and I was thinking it broke, and I took it inside, plugged it into the shop, and sure enough, it did work, plugged into the shop. So this system does seem to struggle with this. Now, I know that it was reading 1500 watts in my wife's power boost, but on this truck it's not reading 1500, but it is reading more and more as the pressure builds. Let's see if this thing will go to cutoff though. 1200. Certainly though, with there being more room, let's do this. Let's pause this. We'll pause this and then we'll power this on. How much is the vacuum drawing by itself? Oh wow, okay. The vacuum's 1,000 watts. Okay, that makes sense. Then that's way too much, both of those together. I mean, you're well over. So the vacuum by itself, 1,000 watts. Very comfortable at running that 1,000 watts too. So with these systems, I don't think it's good to run them at their maximums. I think it's better to run them right in the middle. So a 3,000 watt system should run very well at 2,000 watts. Let's go ahead and switch this back on and listen to that sound. Somehow it's overwhelmed. Where's it reading in the truck? Okay. Oh, it cut off. Okay. Right at the maximum PSI, it's having a hard time. It's cutting, it's killing the inverter. So looking, I was able to see right into the truck real quick. It didn't reach the max PSI, but it does seem like the system is struggling to really be a true 2,000 watts of usable power. So one of the reasons I'm making this is I really want to compare this to the system that I put together using, 4-0 wire on a 12 volt system. The wiring alone was more than the whole system, like the inverter and all that. The wiring greatly was a significant amount more money with the wiring. And that's what it costs to try to get a 3,000 watt system on a 12 volt truck. So thick wiring. So what I'm finding is that even though with the thick wiring that I had, that system alone is probably like $1,000 to build out, maybe $1,200 to build out. If you were to build one of those systems though, it can run more voltage and more power than the Pro Power on a new Super Duty. Although it's not going to be all integrated and nice and everything. But how much can you really power with this built-in system? I mean, it's hard to really say because we don't know what the draw is going to be. I don't know what the draw is on a refrigerator or something like that. And what kind of power is this? I know I have a pure sine wave inverter in the system that I built, and it ran things really well, but on this inverter, it doesn't seem to run this compressor well at the high end of its compression, and it's not, the motor's not running right, like it's not good power. So I'm very curious on that. And it seems like to me, this is a 2000 watt inverter, 2000 watt max inverter. The system that I built was a 6,000 watt system, but a 3,000 watt inverter. It had a 6,000 watt surge and a 3,000 watt operating. This system seems like it has a 2,000 watt surge and maybe a good 1,000 watts. Now we can see with running that compressor, you can get a good 1,200 watts. But I don't think this system really functions consistently at 2,000 watts. So still plugged in here. Let's turn it on, see if it'll do anything for us. No, we got to reset the system on the inside. So yeah, I wonder if I hit a quick reset here. Boop, reset. Does its thing. Let's try this again one more time. Not running right. Is the fan running on the inverter? The fan isn't even running on the, oh, she's running. It found the power to run, but barely. It's barely doing it. It's barely operating that thing. We're at 1,200 watts inside the truck. There's no fan running on this. Not hot or anything, but these are not hot. So nothing seems to be stressing out or working that hard, but and that time we've actually reached our air pressure cutoff. So the system did do it. It actually reached air pressure cutoff, but barely. It's having a hard time starting up that motor when that pressure is built up against it. So I think it's a 2,000 watt max system, and it doesn't have that 4,000 watt surge that you would typically get if you were to purchase a 2,000 watt pure sine wave inverter. You could expect to have a 4,000 watt surge.